Hello and welcome back to the Ruth McFit podcast. Very happy to be here chatting to you as always. It's September now, and this can mean a lot of change for a lot of people. I know that my kids are going back to school this week, and I'm sure a lot of you are in a similar boat. I also know that there can be a lot of change happening. I've spoken to quite a few women who have got children changing school, and with that can come a level of anxiety and worry. And if, like me, you're a bit of a summer person, there is a temptation as we head into this autumn stage to kind of think, oh no, it was over. So I think it can be really important to look at the positives of the change that's happening at the moment. And this is actually something I was asking in the community earlier. It's like, what are the things that you like most about autumn? And I was thinking about how I love the fact that the trees change colour and it looks so pretty, that we've got blackberries in the hedgerows and apples in the trees. I do like an apple and blackberry crumble, and how we can start wearing like our favourite jumpers and things like that. But there's so many things, and I think if, like me, you are a summer person, it can be even more important to focus on those. But that isn't what the podcast is about, and it's probably a good idea that I get started with what we really want to chat about today. And it's going to start with a story about how last week saw me experiencing the worst DOMS that I'd had in a long time. And no, it wasn't after some epic heavy squat session in the gym. It was actually after a little 30-minute session in the garden using lighter weights, because I fancied being outside. It was really sunny that day and I wanted to get out and make the most of the sunshine. And on the first day after this workout, I was aching a fair bit. But by day 2, I was struggling to get up and down off the loo. And I think you know that moment where you're having to keep your legs sort of straight and then collapse onto the loo, and then you're trying to wrestle with the loo holder to stand back up again. Yeah, well, that was me. And all I could think was, really? This level of DOMS from that workout? And I know I'm not alone in this sort of questioning, because coincidentally, I also got a message from a lovely lady on Instagram last week, and she's 43 and she's just started a manageable program of 20 to 30 minutes. She said that it feels like it's nothing excessive. And she said that she really wants that lovely feeling of exercise making her feel stronger, but instead she's just feeling like she's wiped out and it's having the opposite effect. And she's struggling to walk up the stairs after her workouts. And this really stood out to me because she was feeling really confused. You know, the workouts weren't long, they weren't heavy. So why is she getting these aches and why the fatigue? And you might be nodding along at this point because this is exactly what you've noticed too. You've always been able to throw yourself into your workouts without even thinking about recovery. But then midlife comes along, hormones start to shift, sleep gets a bit patchier, stress ramps up, and suddenly our recovery feels that much harder than the workout itself. So today, I really want to look at all of this with you. Why DOMS can feel worse in our 40s, what's really going on with recovery in perimenopause, and of course, most importantly, what we can do about it. Because it's not just hormones making us the victim of our circumstances. There are things that we can control that actually have us feeling better to help us get stronger. So let's get started. And I think we need to start with what DOMS are, delayed onset muscle soreness. It's basically tiny microscopic tears in our muscles. This is the whole point of strength training. We stress the muscles just enough, then the repair process makes us stronger or makes our muscles stronger. Progress isn't what's happening in the workout itself, it's happening afterwards, when we're recovering, when we're repairing. Some people think that DOMS is just the lactic acid hanging around, and that is definitely what we can feel during that burning sensation at the time of the workout. But DOMS is more about those tiny tears and then the inflammation that follows as our body heals. I can remember the first time that I had really bad DOMS. I just started strength training properly, and the next day I had to take my very young children swimming, and I remember trying to bend down and pick them up and put their swim things on, and I was groaning loads. Walking through the swimming pool, I'm pretty sure I was getting lots of looks from other parents. It felt pretty hard. It wasn't pretty. But then years earlier than this, I remember heading to the track for a running session for the first time ever. I'd never trained like that. They were doing 200-meter reps. I was unconditioned for this sort of workout and I went all in, which I think I could get away with because it was a shorter 200-meter type session. And afterwards, I could hardly walk for days. And I remember people saying to me, just go for a gentle jog, run it off. I couldn't. It really hurt. I developed a bruise on my quads. And this is the thing, right? I'd actually torn my quadricep. And the bruise was evidence of that. And there's an important difference here. You see, DOMS is delayed. Often it comes on 24 to 48 hours later, and it eases when we move, whereas injury can tend to hit quicker. We might get swelling or bruising, and we tend to know pretty quickly that something's not right. I also definitely want you to remember that getting DOMS is not the goal of a workout. A good workout doesn't need to leave you crawling up the stairs. Having a little stiffness is fine. It's something that I get fairly regularly. But if you're constantly so sore that you can't function, that it stops you from doing other movement and working out, then we need to look at recovery here. Now, one of the big players in recovery is going to be estrogen. And I like to think of estrogen as a bit of a cushion for our muscles and joints. When we have it there in good amounts, it's protective. It's going to help reduce inflammation and actually support the muscle repair. But as these levels drop, we can think about that cushioning as thinning out. And this can mean that we can feel sorer and we might pick up more niggles, and recovery can take just a bit longer. It's obviously not just estrogen either. Progesterone declining can also mess with sleep quality. And I think we can all relate to how we feel after not sleeping so well. Then we have a slight reduction in our testosterone, which can help with muscle repair as well. And it can feel like our body's natural repair system isn't quite working as efficiently as it did in our 20s and 30s. I have definitely noticed this. I might not be perimenopausal yet, but I used to be able to, in my 20s, go out until 5 in the morning, which is bonkers. I'd stumble home as the sun was coming out and still manage to go to work and train as normal the following week, like nothing had happened. Who even was she? Oh my goodness. And I think it started to change a bit when the kids came along and I wasn't sleeping so well and that tiredness crept in. But I did still manage. Now, however, I feel like a poor night's sleep or having a couple of glasses of wine, and my body really lets me know about it the next day or the day after. I start getting that little flare up in my lower back, which can happen. I feel more heavy and sluggish. And it's like my body is just saying, oi, you're under recovered and I am not letting you get away with this anymore. Now, I also want to look at a few of the myths around recovery, because you're going to hear a lot of rules in midlife about whether you should or shouldn't do HIIT, whether you should or shouldn't train fasted, whether you should or shouldn't do ice baths, whether you should or shouldn't lift heavy. And I think some of these come from people using menopause as a bit of a marketing tool. And the truth is that it's not that we can't do these things, it's just that we need to make informed choices and be intentional. So I'll break a few of them down. If we look at fasted training, women can have a higher cortisol response to men when training fasted, and this can slow down recovery. Research shows that muscle protein synthesis can be reduced when training without fuel, especially in women. So you can train fasted if you feel fine, but if you're struggling with energy or your DOMS are worse, eating beforehand could help your body repair. Now, there are some different things around this, because if your workout's 20 minutes, you ate the evening before, likely you'll be fine. But if you're looking at training for an hour plus, you're likely going to need a bit more energy for that workout. So you need to think about what you're doing as well as when you've last eaten and so on, or when you're next going to eat. And then we have alcohol, which can be a hard topic to cover at this stage of life, because we enjoy having a drink now and again. Research shows alcohol after exercise reduces muscle protein synthesis by up to 37%, even if you consume protein as well. So no adding any alcohol to your protein smoothie, thanks. It also wrecks sleep, so less REM, lower growth hormone, higher cortisol, all of which can impact recovery. And then we add on to that midlife hormonal changes, and that Friday night wine will often hit a little harder than it used to. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it, but informed choices always, right? Knowledge is power, and be aware that it's not necessarily going to help that muscle repair. Then ice baths. I wanted to cover this because of the fact there's so much on social media around cold water. There are some studies that show that cold water immersion doesn't improve recovery in women compared to just resting. And Stacey Sims has gone on about this at point, saying that extreme cold can blunt the adaptive muscle building response. That said, and you'll have seen it too, many women swear by cold water for perimenopausal symptoms like mood, hot flushes, anxiety. So what I think on this is that if you love it, great, keep doing it, but it isn't essential for workout recovery. And there is some research out there about how you shouldn't be doing it straight after a workout. But with all of these things, it's not about banning and saying, I can't do them. It's about understanding the impact it's having on you and the trade-off you're making. So let's think about my workout at the beginning of last week. Why did I end up with those awful DOMs from that little garden session? And a couple of things I think were going on here. Firstly, I was using lighter weights, and that likely meant that I was slowing down my movement, maybe going a little bit lower with a bigger range of motion than I would have if I'd been using a heavier weight or a barbell. And then I also included a sneaky move called a reverse Nordic, which is body weight, pretty hard. And that likely woke up my muscles in a different sort of way than normal as well. I'd also not long got back from traveling. The time difference between where I was and where I am is 5 hours. But even without jet lag, travel can leave us feeling fatigued, maybe a bit dehydrated, and that can make recovery harder. On top of that, I've been feeling like I might be coming down with something. It hasn't actually turned into anything, but I think I was run down, and when our body is already fighting something, repair can take longer. And this is something that I can see with clients all the time. They'll say, would you believe I've now gone and hurt my bloody knee? Or I've gone and got another cold. And I think I can believe it. I'm not surprised. If you've been stressed, sleeping badly, juggling a lot, your body is under more pressure, recovery can slow down. Niggles or illnesses can flare up more easily. This is why it's always important to kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Is it just the workout? Or was it the lack of sleep, the stress, the travel, the glass of wine, the fact that you're perimenopausal? All of these things can add up. And DOMS doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. It just means that our body is adapting. It's in that recovery phase. But recovery isn't just about the workout. It's built on lots of other foundations. So let's look at these. We've got sleep. I mentioned that. If I don't sleep well, I definitely feel stiff, achy, slower. I notice that my grip strength is decreased and my balance is off. I also notice that this is when my SIJ pain in my lower back can flare up. And heavy lifts like deadlifts can feel pretty risky. Then there's the impact that this can have on my mood. I can feel agitated, distracted, less able to focus on my workout. Sometimes the workout helps me zone out, but other times my mind, my body just isn't there. I'll say to my clients about making our evenings calmer, because better sleep isn't just about feeling rested. It's going to be helping our muscles repair and our nervous system reset as well. And then we have stress. I know that in 22, 23, I was under quite a lot of emotional stress. I didn't even necessarily realize it under the time. But we were trying to decide whether to move abroad. And I was paralyzed at this point with indecision. And then my father-in-law actually died. And at this point, I was still going to do workouts. But I was just going through the motions. I was struggling to lift as heavy. I felt properly drained. And this wasn't because I was overtraining. It was because I was stressed and my body needed more time to recover. Often when I'm talking with women I work with, they think they need to just add in more workouts to get quicker results. And it's often the opposite. They need more calm. They need more recovery. Stress hormones keep your body in that fight mode. And this can slow down that repair. We also have nutrition, and we want to make protein a bit of a non-negotiable for recovery. Without it, our body doesn't really have the building blocks for repair of those tiny muscle tears. And clients who start then building their meals around protein start noticing that they've got more energy, fewer afternoon crashes, and they're recovering faster. And we mustn't forget carbs, because they're also fuel. And going very low in carbs while ramping up training and activity is like trying to drive a car with an empty tank. We also have hydration. I know when I was away, I was sweating buckets and this left me feeling pretty exhausted. I did start including electrolytes and I noticed a big difference here. Hydration keeps blood volume up, so nutrients and oxygen can reach your muscles to help them repair. And even when I'm at home and not sweating loads, I notice that if I'm drinking enough, I'm less sluggish and I feel like I've got more mental alertness. But I do want to just add a point on electrolytes here, because they're often just put in as something that you should take no matter what. Now, when I'm sweating loads, I can almost taste, or I can taste the salt that I'm losing, the minerals that I'm losing through my sweat. And this is a sign likely that I need to start having some electrolytes in with my drinks. But if you're not sweating very much and you're getting enough salt and so on in your diet, then you likely don't need to be adding in electrolytes as a supplementary thing. And then looking at hormones as well, because even when you're not perimenopausal, recovery can hit harder at certain points in your cycle. I know that sometimes I would feel absolutely fine to train as normal, and other times I would struggle more. But with perimenopause, it's going to make those times a little bit more unpredictable. I think the approach to take is to aim to train normally, but adapt based on how you're feeling. Don't have any hard and fast rules for this. Just see what each day feels like and adjust and adapt as needed. And that's what we'll go into now. What can you practically do to support your recovery? Adjusting training is going to be one of those things. If energy is low, it's not about skipping the workout, it's just adapting. You can reduce the number of sets, drop the weights, shorten the session if needed. The real win really isn't going to be pushing you to your limits, it's being able to come back and train again. When we're always getting really bad DOMs, their temptation is to skip the workouts. And then what happens is we haven't trained for a bit and we go back in and we get really bad DOMs again. We want to be able to be consistent. We want to be able to continue training. So adapt as needed, but try and keep the habit there so that you're helping your body adjust and get used to that form of training. And then we've got lifestyle habits that aren't just nice extras. They're going to directly affect how you recover. I love my evening routine. It's a non-negotiable. It helps me wind down so that I sleep better, which in turn means I recover better and I'm a nicer human being for it too. If I'm feeling more stressed, I'll do a brain dump because it's like clearing that mental clutter so that my body can then relax. And if my back is niggling, I'm going to focus on a few more stretches there. But I also take that as a sign that I'm slightly under-recovered. I do have another favourite way of recovering, which I feel very lucky to have and I don't take advantage of enough. But years ago, my husband ripped out our bath in our ensuite and built in a small sauna. I definitely don't use it as much as I should, but when I do, it is incredible. Not just because of the heat easing that muscle strength, but because I can't take my phone in there. And that forces me to switch off. And that downtime, that mental calm, is recovery too. It's not just about the muscles, it's about putting your whole body into the best state for repair. And then nutrition and hydration. I'm not going to be worrying about eating within 30 minutes or taking a shake within 30 minutes or finishing a workout. But I do usually try and time my workouts so that I'll be eating soon after anyway. And then I'll go for protein and build the meal around that. You don't need to supplement with protein powders, but they can be useful. For instance, I add them to my overnight oats, but I don't tend to drink them as a shake because I prefer to get a complete protein source in with my meals rather than relying on shakes and so on to get my protein. But like I said, they can be useful to help here. And they're a good backup plan. We've also got magnesium, which is another one that I have used. There are some links to it helping sleep, helping your muscles relax. Some people like to use Epsom salts in their baths as a way of helping them relax as well. Years ago, I went on I took part in a menopause training course. And one of the things they mentioned on that was spraying or rubbing a magnesium cream or spray onto the soles of your feet. And I have recommended this to different people who are perimenopausal over the years, and they have sworn that it's helped them with both their nighttime waking and getting to sleep. I also have used this because I sometimes get restless legs and I found it really helpful for that. And it could be because it is helping our muscles relax. It might be that it's a little bit placebo. I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. If it helps, great. But there are some links about magnesium and sleep. So there we go. And then with hydration, you could start with a glass of water in the morning. I like waking up, having a big glass of water to set things going. And then you could aim to have one at each meal just to help create that habit around things that you're already doing. And we don't want to measure the success of our workouts by how sore you are. It isn't a badge of honor. The goal is going to be recovering well enough so that you can show up consistently, and that will then drive your progress. It's not crawling up the stairs every session. The science backs this up as well. Estrogen plays a protective role in muscle repair, which is why soreness can feel worse as levels drop. Sleep restriction reduces recovery and increases fatigue. Muscle protein synthesis is lower in older adults, so spreading protein evenly across meals can matter more at this stage of life. And alcohol reduces protein synthesis and impacts our sleep. So yes, hormones play a role, but lifestyle plays a huge role too. Stress, nutrition, sleep, hydration, mindset, all of these things are within your control. Recovery isn't something that we need to fear. It's not something that needs to be more to add to the list. It's something you can actually get better at. So if you've been feeling a bit frustrated that you don't bounce back the way you used to, take a big breath and remember you're not broken. You're just at a stage of life where recovery needs a little more attention. And this can be good news because paying attention to our recovery isn't just about making you stronger in your workouts. It's going to make you feel better in general. Recovery isn't a weakness. It's not optional. It's the training that happens when you're not in the gym. And when you start giving it the respect that it deserves, you don't just survive midlife. You can feel great. You can make the changes you want. Everything feels easier when you feel calmer, and that includes recovery. And if I've caught you at a time where you're currently suffering from DOMS, then aim to do some gentle movement. Get up, get walking, move around, but avoid just sitting there and waiting until it just all goes away. If this episode resonated with you and you were nodding along, then please do like and subscribe to this podcast so more women can find it and get the support that they need. Share it with a friend that might need it. Leave a comment to let me know any thoughts or questions you might have. And of course, reach out to me on Instagram at RuthMacFit because I love hearing from you and chatting about the changes that you're making or looking to make. If you want to find out more about the no crap cake method, where women are rebelling against the all or nothing and feeling great at midlife, then you can head to www.ruthmacfit.com for more info there. Until next time, goodbye.